What's up, guys? It's your boy Zwokey back out with another Chris Watts video. And with by popular demand on this video, you guys have been asking me to watch this, which is Chris Watts' Anadarko co-workers spill the beans on Nichol Kessinger. I'm intrigued. Hopefully it's not the interviews that we've already heard before, but you know, on Channel Zwokey, we want to watch at least everything once from different channels all over the YouTube algorithm. And we're going to be watching dark crimes within a YouTube channel I don't believe that we watched before. But if you want to watch with me, I suggest you grab a chair, get comfortable. Also, don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel by hitting that whiteboard icon down at the bottom right. Hit that bell icon next to it. So when I do post videos like this one, you guys will get that little ring notification that I've posted that video. And then you guys can watch, comment, like, and share. And again, thank you all for that support my channel. I can't thank you guys enough. Keep doing what you guys are doing, and hopefully one day we will hit that 100K goal. If you don't want to watch with me, I understand. Again, not a lot of people can watch reaction, commentary, or opinionated channels, but the link is in the description. If you guys like to go over there, watch, comment, like, and share at your will. But for those that want to watch with me, let's get into the video. It would work if I turned on that sound.
He leaned closer, his voice barely above the hum of the oil rigs. They told us not to talk about her. For a second, everything stopped, the machines, the chatter, even breath. Her, Nichol Kessinger, the name that turned a workplace affair into a national obsession. What he said next wasn't rumor. It was the kind of truth that makes silence feel safer, and once you hear it, you'll understand why no one at Anadarko ever spoke again.
So it was being silenced at work?
5:30, we're north of the alleyway, 51st Street, Washburn, east side.
All units, shots fired!
I'd be like, oh, Chris, we see that you didn't come into work today. Oh, well, that's not a very good excuse for not coming in. So, we appreciate your, you giving us a call, but we need you to come to work. Oh, you murdered your family? Oh, okay, we're going to have to ask that you, remove everything from the premises from here. You are no longer with us, and have a good day. That's probably how that call went. Probably not, but...
Fire! Need backup! We're under fire! We have 233!
Welcome to Dark Crimes Within. Thank you for supporting us. Subscribe now, and enter the world of chilling true crime stories. Before we begin, a quick question for you. Where are you watching from? Drop your location in the comments below. It's always haunting to see how far one story can travel, from small towns to...
I've seen it go everywhere in the world.
Big cities, from quiet homes to screens across the world. Now, let's go back to where it all began, deep inside the oil fields of Colorado, where one man's whisper would reopen a case the world thought it already knew.
Pumps.
It starts with a voice no one was supposed to hear, a low, altered recording that slips through static. The man behind it still works for Anadarko Petroleum, the same company where Chris Watts once wore his badge every morning. His tone is cautious, but his message is clear.
There is no Anadarko Petroleum anymore. It was sold. How old is this video? 2 days?
Told us not to talk about her. Before the headlines, before the trial, before the entire world memorized the Watts family name, there was an office full of ordinary people who watched something unravel in real time and didn't know what to make of it. One of them has finally decided to speak.
Oh.
He isn't a detective or a journalist. He's an engineer, a man whose job was to keep the oil running, not to interpret human behavior.
Who is this?
But he worked near Chris. He saw him every day. And what he remembers now carries a weight that refuses to leave his conscience. He describes those last weeks before everything fell apart, the quiet shift in energy, the moments that felt wrong but were too subtle to name. Chris had changed. He'd lost weight, started paying closer attention to his clothes, and walked with a confidence people hadn't seen before. For years, he had been invisible, the polite coworker who kept to himself. Then, almost overnight, he became someone else. People noticed. They just didn't understand what they were seeing. The coworker says it began with small things. Chris stayed longer after work. He took calls in his truck. His phone never left his hand. What stood out most wasn't what he said, it was what he stopped saying. Conversations grew shorter, his answers clipped, his eyes distant. Around the same time, a new name began circulating quietly through the office, Nichol Kessinger. Nichol worked in the environmental department, intelligent, competent, and different from most of the field workers around
I don't know about those words of descriptions, but okay.
her. She carried herself with quiet confidence, and in a workplace where women were outnumbered, confidence was often misunderstood. Some said she was friendly. Others said she was too friendly. The coworker remembers hearing her name whispered with curiosity, but never malice. Still, when he saw the way Chris looked at her, focused, alive, he sensed something unspoken had begun. When the story later reached the public, it was reduced to a headline, "The Affair." But inside Anadarko, it was more complicated. The coworker insists that long before the news broke, people had noticed patterns, unexplained absences, changed routes, missed meetings. He recalls nights when Chris's truck left early, or mornings when he seemed restless, glancing at his phone between assignments. The workplace that once ran on routine had started to feel tense, like everyone sensed something wrong but no one wanted to name it. Then came the Monday morning that changed everything. Word spread that Chris's wife and children were missing. At first, it was disbelief, a father, a husband, searching for his family. But within hours, the tone inside Anadarko shifted. Supervisors called quiet meetings. Employees were told to stay away from reporters and to avoid speculation. The coworker remembers walking past managers' offices and seeing blinds drawn. What had once been a workplace of noise and chatter turned silent overnight. That silence is what haunted
So Anadarko was silencing people?
him most. The company's concern seemed less about the missing family and more about the company's image. Emails circulated reminding staff that public statements could affect ongoing investigations and the corporate brand. To him, that message was unmistakable: protect the name, not the truth. For days, employees traded uneasy glances, wondering who knew what. Then, one evening, the coworker saw Chris's face on every television screen in the break room.
Ooh.
The investigation had taken a turn, and suddenly the man they'd shared lunch with was accused of the unthinkable. Inside Anadarko, people stopped talking altogether. It wasn't shock anymore, it was self-preservation. Still, one name kept echoing in hushed tones: Nichol Kessinger. She had vanished from the office, and with her disappearance came a storm of speculation. The company refused to answer questions, and anyone who asked was warned to focus on work. That was the moment the coworker realized the truth might never come out, unless someone inside spoke up. Now, years later, his voice trembles as he revisits those weeks. He doesn't accuse, he recalls. He talks about the unease, the silence, the things people ignored because they didn't fit into the image of who Chris was supposed to be. For him, the guilt isn't about what he did, it's about what he didn't. The long pauses. The missed questions. The quiet compliance that let a man live a double life right in front of them. He says he's speaking now because the story everyone knows isn't the whole story. There was more happening inside Anadarko than anyone outside
By who is that?
ever understood: unspoken pressure, office politics, and a culture where silence was safer than curiosity. Breaking that silence now comes with risk, but he no longer cares. You can't keep what you know buried forever, he says softly through the distortion. It always finds its way out. He isn't leaking gossip. He's leaking conscience, and for the company that built its empire on containment, that might be the most dangerous leak of all. He lived just a few houses down on Steeple Rock Drive. A quiet stretch of Colorado suburbia where the air smelled of morning sprinklers and diesel from company trucks heading toward the oil fields. To most, he was simply another face in a row of identical driveways. But for the man telling this story, that neighborhood would never look the same again. He worked alongside Chris Watts at Anadarko Petroleum. Every day began the same: early alarms, quick coffee, badge through the gate, safety checks, long drives into the plains. Routine was the rhythm that kept the job predictable, and predictability was how people survived in that line of work. Everyone followed the same pattern until the day one man stopped. The witness remembers it clearly. Chris had always been dependable, quiet, and almost painfully polite, the kind of coworker who avoided drama and did exactly what was required, nothing more. But by midsummer 2018, something about him began to shift. He arrived early some days, late on others. He lingered in his truck, phone pressed to his ear, and when coworkers approached, he ended conversations abruptly. He seemed present in body but elsewhere in thought. No one called it a problem. They just noticed. Then came the physical changes: weight loss, a new haircut, a faint trace of cologne that hadn't been there before. He smiled more, but it was a different kind of smile, one that felt rehearsed. When the crew teased him about his new look, he shrugged and said nothing. The witness recalls thinking that maybe Chris was trying to fix something at home. Whatever it was, it made him harder to read. In the oil fields, people
I
rarely
wonder if this coworker is anonymous.
spoke about their personal lives. Privacy was part of the unspoken code. Yet within those weeks, the air around Chris grew tense, small hesitations, distracted replies, too many quick glances at his phone. It wasn't dramatic, it was subtle enough to pass as fatigue. Still, the witness could sense that something unseen had taken over his attention. The last time they worked a full shift together, Chris seemed detached, polite as ever, but drained, as if running 2 lives at once. He handled his tasks with precision, but his eyes were fixed somewhere far beyond the horizon. He looked like a man waiting for something, the witness later said, not a man at peace. That line stayed with him long after the news broke. When word spread that Sean and Watson, her 2 daughters, were missing, the witness felt his stomach drop. He didn't understand how a family could simply vanish, and like many of his colleagues, he refused to believe Chris could be involved. In those early hours, everyone at Anadarko was in shock. Yet beneath the disbelief came a quieter fear, not of guilt or innocence, but of exposure. By that afternoon, management had issued strict instructions: no comments to the press, no speculation, no internal discussion. Questions were redirected up the chain of command, and the routine that once defined the company was replaced by careful silence. The witness followed the rules. He kept his head down, avoided reporters, and watched as the story overtook every television screen in Colorado. But silence carries a cost. Each new headline made him replay old moments, the way Chris avoided eye contact, the constant texts, the half-answers. With every memory, the weight of what he hadn't said grew heavier. Weeks passed before he decided to speak, and even then, his reasons were personal, not heroic. He says he was tired of carrying fragments of a truth that no one wanted to hear. He didn't expect to solve the case or rewrite the record, he just wanted to release what had been locked inside him since that summer. He describes Chris as a man who could separate his worlds with surgical precision, a father and husband in one life, an entirely different person in the other. At work, he was still the same efficient technician, still offering to help others with their tasks. But when he thought no one was watching, the mask slipped. He'd scroll through messages, step away for long calls, and return with a faint smile that didn't match the tone of the day. Those small changes, invisible to outsiders, were now impossible for the witness to forget. He doesn't claim.
You can tell when a person's having a bad day. Like, I feel like I am a good judge of character, and like I feel like I can pinpoint when somebody at work or at home is having a bad day or pissy or whatever have you, and I can call it out, and they're like, "Oh, that's not me." Are you sure? Because you look like you're having a bad day. What's going on? Talk to me. So I definitely could see that this guy was seeing the signs with Chris, but I wonder if he was seeing anything with NK. I mean, they probably didn't see her every single day since she was an environmental specialist, and she sat in her office more than she. So it would have been harder to see what Nichol was doing in her office. But again, that woman knew how to play men like a fiddle.
Certainty about every detail, and he refuses to exaggerate what he saw. He knows memory can distort under guilt, and guilt is what he's been living with. His words aren't accusations.
So this guy thinks he has guilt because he didn't come forward right away? It's not your fault, dude.
Their confession, a way of acknowledging that the signs were there, hiding in plain sight. When asked why he waited,
I mean, that's what I would have felt bad. Like, I saw these and I should have either said something to them or said something to like my employer. Hey, something's going on with these two. We need to ixnay it or something. Or, hey, something's going on with Chris. I need to go talk to him. Hey, Chris, how's it going? Do you need somebody to talk to? Like, you want to see those signs and you want to see if everybody's okay. I know there's a couple or there was one person yesterday when I was at work. They just seemed down. And I kind of was like, hey, everything going all right? Oh, there's a lot going on at home and a lot of that's going here. And I'm just like, well, if you ever need somebody or need anybody to talk to, I'll talk to you. I'll listen. They didn't say yes, but my door is technically always open. So
long to speak, his answer is quiet, fear. Not of Chris, but of the system that prized loyalty over truth. In his world, reputation was everything. To question a coworker was to question the company. That unwritten rule had kept him silent until the silence itself became unbearable.
But Anadarko's been out of business for a while, so why didn't this person come forward sooner?
The last image he remembers of Chris is simple, standing by his truck, hands in pockets, looking out over the flat Colorado horizon as if he could already see a future no one else knew was coming. The witness didn't wave, neither did Chris. It was an ordinary goodbye on an ordinary day, the kind people never realize is their last. He says that moment plays in his mind every time he drives past the site or hears the name Nichol Kessinger. To him, those final days weren't about scandal or headlines, they were about patterns everyone saw but no one confronted. Speaking now, he isn't searching for redemption, he's acknowledging the cost of ignoring quiet signs. And as his voice fades through distortion, one truth becomes clear.
And I've always said, if anybody knows Chris or knows NK and wants to talk, I'm willing to pay for an interview. I'd love to talk to you and see what we can discuss about Chris or Nicole and so forth. So that offer is always available.
He didn't set out to expose a secret. He set out to end the silence. The co-worker's claims had stirred public curiosity, but inside the investigation, curiosity wasn't enough, it needed proof. His voice, shaky yet certain, described events that didn't appear anywhere in the official records. So detectives began where every story should, the timeline. He insisted Chris Watts had come by the platform office early on Monday, August 13th, before heading out to the oil site. He remembered seeing him, calm, distracted, but present, answering questions with short replies before leaving again. Yet when investigators pulled data from Chris's company truck, the numbers told another story. The GPS trace for that morning was uninterrupted, a clean path from his driveway to the Survey 319 site.
Okay.
No detours, no unexplained stops, no sign of a visit to the Anadarko office. Company security logs supported the same pattern, no card swipe, no surveillance hit, nothing to suggest he ever arrived at the platform. Machines have no emotion. They record where people go, not what they intend. But sometimes, human memory is shaped less by fact than by the tension of what it wishes were true. When the co-worker was questioned again, he doubled down. He said he could picture it clearly, Chris walking in, distracted, speaking briefly to someone. But that someone never came forward. No other employee confirmed the sighting. That was the first contradiction.
So they're saying that Chris went to the office instead and talked to some higher-up person?
A second came from an even more personal claim, the story of a car. He told investigators that weeks before the tragedy, he and his wife were driving through Frederick when they noticed Chris's truck ahead of them. A woman was in the passenger seat, one he didn't recognize. He tried to catch up, but Chris sped off. To him, that moment had always felt like confirmation, proof that something was happening behind the scenes. Detectives took the reports seriously. They checked traffic cameras and nearby business footage, looking for any match to the description or vehicle route. Nothing surfaced. If the sighting happened, it left no trace. If it didn't, then the image may have lived only in memory, a detail that felt real because it fit the larger story he'd already begun to tell himself. Memory has its own way of defending the heart. When guilt or confusion lingers, the mind builds structure around fragments, a timeline, an image, a face. It becomes a way of explaining the inexplicable. For this witness, the memory of that car, and the woman inside, was as tangible as a photograph. But without data, it remained only that, recollection, not evidence. The third and final part of his testimony raised the most debate. He said Nichol Kessinger hadn't shown up to work that Monday morning.
Correct.
Her office, he claimed, was dark and empty. That detail spread quickly online, adding fuel to speculation.
Okay.
Yet, internal company records showed a different truth. Her logins, emails, and timestamps placed her at work during regular hours. Even her digital activity from that morning matched her usual.
She didn't clock in till 2.
Pattern. To the public, that might look like a simple contradiction. To investigators, it's more complicated. Witness memory doesn't just record events, it edits them. The moment the story became national news, details that once felt ordinary began to rearrange themselves. People remembered what stood out, not what matched the data. Still, the co-worker never wavered. He told interviewers he wasn't trying to create scandal, only to describe what felt wrong in those weeks before everything collapsed. He admitted he could be mistaken about timing, but not about the sense that something had been off. In that, investigators quietly agreed. Almost everyone who knew Chris felt it too, even if they couldn't explain it until it was too late. What his account revealed wasn't deception, it was dissonance. A collision between two forms of truth, one measured by machines, the other shaped by conscience. The GPS and company records outlined an exact path through space and time. His memory outlined emotion, a man wrestling with disbelief, trying to make sense of someone he thought he knew. When all the data was cross-checked, the official findings stood firm. There was no record of Chris entering the office that morning.
Okay.
No verified evidence of the car sighting. And no support for the claim that Nichol had been absent from work. But what the coworker did provide was insight, a window into how human recollection can blur when tragedy strikes.
So you're saying that that was there, but like Nicole being at the office or Chris being at the office or whatever have you, is this person claiming that somebody technically deleted all that? I don't know. I still want your guys' thoughts down below, please.
He wasn't lying. He was searching, trying to fit logic into a story that had none. The investigators saw it, the audience hears it, and everyone understands that uneasy truth. Sometimes people misremember not to deceive, but to survive what they can't explain. And so, the chapter closes not with proof, but with perspective. The facts exist, unshaken, in digital form. Yet the witnesses' words linger, because they remind us that memory isn't data, it's experience. And in a case where technology captured every movement but none of the motive, that distinction matters more than ever. As his statement ends, one question remains: if his memory can bend around trauma, how many others at Anadarko might have done the same? That question leads us into the next act, inside the company itself, where silence, perception, and unspoken loyalties tell.
There's been people that do believe that Anadarko was involved. I don't think Anadarko was involved. I don't think so. Then they would have been a successor rather than having to sell the company. But yet again, I can't put anything past this case anymore because some of this stuff does make sense. Some of it's completely far-fetched. But comment your thoughts down below on that one.
A story no database ever could. Anadarko Petroleum ran on discipline. Every procedure was documented, every hazard assessed, every minute accounted for.
Was it?
Out in the Colorado fields, safety manuals dictated behavior down to the smallest task: how to check valves, when to radio in, how long to remain on site. Structure kept everything stable. But what it couldn't control was human behavior. Inside the company, hierarchy ruled quietly. Field technicians followed supervisors, supervisors answered to project managers. Questions didn't travel upward unless they had to. It was a culture built on getting the job done, efficient, silent, and loyal. And for years, that silence kept things predictable. Until August 2018, when the Watts case turned routine into crisis. After the news broke, the once ordinary office corridors changed overnight. Conversations stopped mid-sentence. Employees avoided eye contact. Management sent short, carefully worded emails reminding everyone to avoid external communication.
That Christmas party probably was very awkward.
And direct all inquiries to corporate relations. It sounded procedural, but everyone understood the subtext: say nothing. That unspoken rule wasn't new. In a place where careers depended on reliability, speaking out carried risk. People learned early that discretion protected their paychecks. When the company's name began appearing beside national headlines, silence became more than loyalty, it was survival. The workforce itself was a world of contrasts: rugged field workers and polished corporate professionals, bound together by production targets. The oil industry had always been male-dominated, and at Anadarko, that balance was no different. Out on the rigs, women were rare. Those who were there, like Nichol Kessinger, stood out whether they wanted to or not. Nichol worked in environment.
So they're like the bottom of the barrel that decided to go into geology.
Mental safety, an area that requires.
I'm not saying anything bad about geology, so any geologists that are watching this, I'm sorry. I'm not saying your job sucks. Big Bang Theory ruined it for me, okay? Sheldon always thought geologists were the, what did he say? The Oompa Loompas of science.
Required both field oversight and office coordination. She was respected for her knowledge, often described as meticulous and calm under pressure. Yet in an environment where toughness was prized, her confidence was sometimes misread. To some, it looked like friendliness. To others, it was seen as an invitation. Few people asked what she actually wanted, they only speculated.
But
when whispers of her connection to Chris Watts began, they didn't stay whispers for long. The relationship violated no company policy, but in a
that relationship was violated way long ago when Nichol Kessinger. Yeah, let's just continue.
workplace steeped in gossip and competition, perception became punishment. The woman who
I've been watching too much Matt Rife lately.
who had once been known for her professionalism was suddenly the focus of quiet glances and half-finished sentences. Those who worked nearby remember how fast things changed after the investigation began. HR meetings replaced project briefings. Supervisors reminded staff to maintain focus and
Sexual harassment seminars as probably one of those possibly involved. Quid pro, don't do it.
avoid distraction.
Quid pro
Nobody
pro
said
or
her name
whatever it's
aloud,
called.
but everyone knew who they meant. Within days, she stopped coming to work. Her absence was never formally addressed.
She got the Donald Trump. You fired. She fired.
One morning her name simply disappeared from internal rosters, her desk cleared without announcement. To outsiders, it looked like removal. Inside Anadarko, it was containment. The company was protecting itself, not assigning blame, but distancing from scandal. Employees were instructed.
They already had scandals already happening with that explosion under the house. A leak happened, causing this house to explode, killing a couple or a few people. So they already had some bad juju news with their company. They didn't want this to happen.
Not to discuss the case, not even in private. Those who did risked reprimand. Silence became a reflex. It wasn't just about public image. It was about control, keeping rumor from contaminating operations. In a corporation that tracked every movement of its trucks and workers, reputation was just another metric to manage. And so, when questions arose about Nichol's role, the official stance remained unchanged. We are cooperating.
They're probably like, hop, 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 hop. Shh. We don't say that name around here anymore. Shush, shush. It's probably how they were.
Fully with authorities. Beyond that, nothing. For many employees, that silence was unsettling. They weren't sure what to believe, about Chris, about Nichol, or about the company itself. Some felt sympathy for her, saying she'd been pulled into something she couldn't have foreseen.
Oh, she was pulled into something. You catch my drift. Okay, I'm done.
Others believed she knew more than she admitted. The truth was lost somewhere between corporate caution and public outrage. Days turned into weeks, and the building tension never quite settled. By late August, security patrols around the offices had increased.
Seriously?
Reporters lingered outside the gates, hoping to catch a quote or a photograph.
Wow.
Inside, the staff went about their work as if nothing had happened, pretending that the tragedy outside those walls hadn't reached them. But it had. It lived in every lowered voice and every closed-door meeting. For those who worked there, the lesson was quiet but lasting. Even in a company that mastered safety, no one had written a manual for emotional fallout. You could protect pipelines from leaks, but not people from guilt.
Ooh.
You could seal off a site, but not silence speculation. In this world, the narrator reflects, safety manuals covered every chemical hazard, but none for rumor. Anadarko would later rebrand and reorganize, but those who were there remember the months that followed as heavy.
The company.
Filled with anxiety, mistrust, and unspoken grief. Chris Watts had worked among them for years without suspicion. Nichol Kessinger had built a career there before her name became public property. And the company that once felt indestructible was suddenly learning that the hardest damage to contain wasn't mechanical, it was moral. The witness who first spoke about what he'd seen had never intended to expose a corporation. But his words revealed something larger than one man's memory, a workplace where truth was managed like a risk, and emotion was treated like a contaminant. Now, with the internal silence closing around Nichol's disappearance from Anadarko, the focus moves to her, not as rumor or symbol, but as the woman who found herself standing in the crossfire of scandal, secrecy, and a company too powerful to let emotion exist in public view. By the time the headlines began circling the globe, one name had already escaped the boundaries of fact, Nichol Kessinger. She was never charged, never formally accused, yet her identity became inseparable.
And not even formally talked to, investigated.
From the tragedy. Her name traveled faster than evidence ever could, carried by rumor, emotion, and the public's need to assign blame. Before the case consumed her,
I wouldn't say it's necessarily to find blame, but it's to find those that have been involved. Like, you can blame anybody, but to actually involve them because they were involved, you need to find that evidence. So we need to talk to them, and they were like, nope, you're not talking to her. We made a deal. She's fine. We're good, though. We got Chris, though.
Life. Nichol was an environmental safety specialist at Anadarko Petroleum. Her work was technical, methodical, analyzing reports, ensuring compliance, preventing environmental risk. Colleagues described her as reserved and exacting, a professional who preferred procedure to attention. She lived in the background of the company's operations, clocking in quietly, leaving quietly. But after August 2018, that quiet was replaced by something far louder. When investigators questioned her, she didn't hesitate to cooperate. She turned over her phone, emails,
but tell them why,
and weeks of communication with Chris Watts, a relationship she said began as friendship and grew into something she believed was genuine. She told authorities he'd claimed his marriage was ending, that he lived separately, that their connection was real. Her interview was factual, composed, and consistent. To detectives, it was one more account to file. To the public, it was an invitation to dissect her every word. Once her interviews became public record, the digital world ignited. Comment sections filled with outrage and speculation. Entire forums appeared overnight dedicated to her, strangers debating her expressions, tone.
There's dedicated Discord channels. That's nuts.
And motives as though they were evidence. In an investigation rooted in forensic precision, the internet created its own court, one ruled by emotion, not verification. The more people watched, the more her image fractured. To some, she was naive, manipulated by a man living a lie. To others, she was complicit, the spark that ignited something unthinkable.
Was she?
Truth became secondary to narrative. Posts repeated until speculation hardened into certainty, and certainty into myth. The line between fact and interpretation vanished. Even the anonymous co-worker's remarks, intended to share what he'd seen, deepened that spiral. When he mentioned that Nichol hadn't been at work the morning of the disappearance, forums exploded. His recollection, unconfirmed and contradictory to company records, became fuel for conspiracy. To him, it was memory. Online,
So this guy must have had been at the office all day because he would have known if NK was there. So he's technically not. So is this coworker around NK more or around Chris more? That's another question we need.
became motive. One man's uncertainty turned into another woman's condemnation. As attention swelled, Nichol withdrew completely from public view. No press statements, no interviews, no defensive.
She went to a Colorado newspaper or Post. That's about it. And she wore the necklace that Chris Watts bought her. What a slap in the face.
The silence that once defined Anadarko now surrounded her life. In absence, people created their own stories, that she'd changed her name, moved abroad, or vanished altogether. None of it was verified, yet the lack of proof only made it more believable. Her disappearance from the public eye mirrored the company's instinct for control, when faced with chaos, close ranks. But this time, there was no corporate shield to protect her. Her privacy became the cost of another
That's why she went to her safe house and said, "Daddy, save me!"
person's crime. Every new documentary, every anniversary feature, revived the same question: where is she now? As if her location could explain the choices of another. Archived records paint a quieter reality.
That's why I don't care where she lives. Because that has no connection to the case.
She wasn't a strategist or a seductress, she was an employee who met someone she shouldn't have trusted. The messages, dates, and interviews reveal a woman trying to understand how quickly something ordinary had become catastrophic. Her cooperation with investigators didn't erase suspicion, it invited new forms of it. Because once a narrative solidifies online, facts don't dissolve it. They simply get ignored. In digital spaces, belief travels faster than evidence. Each click, each repost, keeps a story alive long after its relevance fades. For Nichol, that meant her life froze in the moment her name became public. Every job lead, every relationship, every attempt at anonymity was shadowed by search results she couldn't control. The coworker who once sought to ease his conscience never intended to change her life. Yet his words, combined with corporate silence and public rage, reshaped it entirely. The story he told blurred into the one the internet demanded, one where someone had to represent temptation, deceit, and consequence. Nichol fit that image too easily, and the world accepted it. The internet wanted a witch to burn, the narrator reflects, but behind the headlines was an employee who once simply clocked in and out.
That's a bold statement.
That line captures the quiet tragedy of her aftermath. What began as a workplace connection became a global fixation, a human being transformed into a symbol for everything people feared and couldn't forgive. She was never the subject of charges, but she became the object of collective punishment.
She also was apparently an empanada.
Her story stands as a mirror to the culture that built it, one that devours complexity and rewards outrage.
Now Hot Pocket.
And as the years pass, her silence remains her only defense. A reminder that in the war between truth and narrative, the first casualty is often the person caught in between. The next act turns back to the broader picture, the investigation's final reckoning and what the case revealed about how a single crime can expose not just one man's deception, but the fragility of every system that failed to see it coming. When the noise finally died down, the man who had spoken, the coworker whose words once rippled through headlines, found that truth had not brought him peace. He'd expected relief, some moral clarity. Instead, what settled was exhaustion. The world had moved on, but he hadn't. Every morning, he still drove past the same quiet street where the Watts family once lived, the same empty driveway that seemed to hold its breath. What used to feel familiar now felt foreign, too silent, too aware. Inside Anadarko, the aftermath was handled with precision, not empathy. Weeks after the sentencing, an internal memo arrived in inboxes across the company. It thanked employee professionalism, reminded them of confidentiality obligations,
That espresso is looking pretty good over there. Not gonna lie.
and promised cooperation with ongoing authorities. It said everything, and nothing. For the corporation, closure was a checkbox. For the people inside it, closure didn't exist. In the office break rooms, conversations about the case faded as quickly as they'd begun. New projects filled calendars, new hires arrived, and the rhythm of production resumed. The company's reputation was intact. But for those who'd known Chris, or crossed paths with Nichol, that rhythm sounded off, like a machine that still functioned but no longer trusted itself. The co-worker stayed quiet for months. He avoided interviews, stopped answering messages from reporters. When he finally spoke again, it wasn't to defend himself, but to reflect. He admitted that his decision to share what he'd seen hadn't changed the story, only his own life. What he thought would be cathartic became a new kind of burden.
Like, literally, what he's telling us is something that, I mean, it's important, but at the same time, would it be beneficial for the case? Not really, besides the whole division between if Nichol Kessinger was at the office or not. Which we would like to know, because if she was there helping, but again, she apparently had a alibi of her whereabouts because she was with Jim, but then she says, "Oh, I don't want you talking to Jim. Leave Jim alone." So we definitely, I feel like this video is connecting a couple dots that is something of interest, but is it enough for them to say, "Hey, we got to open up this case"? No. What's going to help open up this case or start a different case on Nichol Kessinger is a new DA.
The beans he spilled weren't secrets about others. They were pieces of his own conscience, guilt, confusion, the need to make sense of what had happened in front of him. He said something that stayed with those who heard it. "I thought I was exposing someone. I was really exposing all of us, what we want from tragedy, what we feed on." It was true. The public had treated his words like confession, not reflection. His observations about Nichol became weaponized, his memories, distorted into motive. And in chasing the details, everyone missed what his voice had actually revealed, that ordinary people, trapped inside extraordinary events, often become stories they never asked to tell. In the months that followed, Anadarko continued its transformation, mergers, rebranding, restructuring. The company that once managed oil and gas now quietly managed its image. Employees who remembered those months rarely spoke about them. Not from fear, but from fatigue. It was easier to stay busy than to revisit the silence that still hovered over the place. One detail from that time remains. On a desk inside a nearly empty office, someone found a badge, clean, uncollected, left behind. No one knew whose it was. Perhaps a symbol, perhaps coincidence. But for those who saw it, it seemed to mark the end of something unspoken, the last trace of those who couldn't carry the weight of what they'd witnessed anymore. The co-worker never returned to public view. He still works, still lives quietly, still wonders whether telling the truth made any difference. Some nights, he replays his words online, hearing the distortion of his own voice, unfamiliar, yet undeniable. What once felt brave now feels distant. Time has reduced everything to fragments, interviews, screenshots, rumors, scattered pieces of a story no longer his to control. Out in the fields, the machinery runs as it always did. The flare stacks pulse against the twilight. The world keeps measuring output, efficiency, and risk, everything except the human cost. He thought he was revealing her, the narrator says softly. In truth, he revealed us, our appetite for scandal, our fear of empathy, and the ease with which we trade truth for spectacle. The office is empty now. The memo is archived. The driveway is still. What remains is a question, one that can't be answered by reports, data, or policy. Companies measure performance. Neighborhoods measure routine. The world measures villains and victims. But conscience? That's measured by what we say when silence feels safer. The scene.
These AIs are like, I think it's an AI, but these AIs like are taking everything that I want to say and it's making it make sense. Because sometimes I just fumble over my words because apparently I don't speak well. But the things that it says, I'm like, dang, I was just thinking about that.
Fades, not into resolution, but reflection. A quiet pause. The screen goes dark. And before the credits rise, one final voice returns, not for drama, but connection.
The coworker.
Where are you watching from? Tell us below.
So, I'm going to leave it there. definitely interesting to know that there may be a coworker that knows some information, but to not give like who it is, that really hurts the case. Oh, I wouldn't say hurts the case, but it doesn't help. Spills the beans on Nichol Kessinger. Yeah. I mean, we could go even more. I want to know if anybody, ex-boyfriends that were with Kessinger or coworkers, if you're wanting to give an interview about your connection with her, that you were a friend, ex-boyfriend, I'll talk to you. I'll interview you, and you'll get paid. So come to my DMs. Let me know. Comment your thoughts in between this video, or this interview, or not interview, video that we just watched. Timestamp it so I know exactly where you are by talking it, because normally when you timestamp it, I'll watch like 15 seconds and then I'll read your comment so I know how to respond. So it just helps me help you, we just help each other out. Please keep it positive. No negativity down below. We can debate and not get nasty. And share with your friends. Subscribe for more. We'll see you guys in the next video. Please take care. Be safe. And as always, keep nerding on. And we will see you guys in the next video.